Erica and I got our plane tickets, a rental car, and our permits well in advance to do the Rae Lakes Loop in Kings Canyon National Park. Our goal on the first day was simply to get to the first available campsite because by the time our flight landed and we got to the trailhead, it was already almost 3 o'clock. The Rae Lakes Loop starts out with a very flat 2-mile section. Our goal actually was to do the Rae Lakes Loop plus some additional side out and back trips that we ended up doing. And just so you know, this video does have 4 bears in it, and we were able to capture all of them on video as we encountered them. So there's the first one, and that actually happened within the first 2 miles. And I already had my camera out and was videoing just because it was so early in the trip, and we were able to capture it. It's actually a black bear. Black bears are also bears that are brown a lot of times. The other thing that we saw in the first 2 miles was just the massive trees, and everything was just out of proportion to what we're used to.
The trail.
Also, within the first 3 miles, we ran across some more wildlife where there was a rattlesnake just sitting there in the middle of the trail. As soon as we got close, he moved off. After the first 2 miles, when you're going counterclockwise, you just start going up. And as you go up, you get to some switchbacks, and every time you get to a switchback, the view just gets better and better. Every time you turn around, you think, oh, the view can't get any better than that, but it does. So we did make it to our first campsite and set up. This would be a common theme, to just get our camp set up so that we could eat dinner and get to bed. This ended up being a 6-night, 7-day trip. So on day 2, our goal was to go to Lake Reflection, which is not part of the Rae Lakes Loop, and then to camp at East Lake. And so that's what we ended up doing. And as soon as we woke up, across the stream and up the side of the mountain, there was another bear. Now this is about on my phone camera with the 3x zoom going on. So he's pretty far away, but he was easy to pick out because he was the only thing moving on the side of the mountain. So we got to watch him disappear into the brush in the distance before we got our breakfast and got packed up and started up toward Lake Reflection. Everything up in this area in Kings Canyon National Park is just out of scale to what I'm used to, and it's hard to really appreciate how big things are. And hopefully this shot helps illustrate some of that, where these massive boulders just fall off the sides of the mountain however many thousands of years ago, and you can see just how big they are. And then also on the second day, there was yet another bear, and he was just out in the meadow chomping on some grass.
Bigger than the other one.
We did yell, "Hey bear," and he did look up, but I think he already knew we were there. And like the other ones we saw, this is a black bear, but it is also a bear that's brown. This part of the trip involved a lot of uphill once we got to a creek, Bubbs Creek, where we had to cross. The ranger had actually told us that that portion of the creek was uncrossable, but we did cross it. The Rae Lakes Loop is really popular, and you see another guy going by there, and he's doing the loop clockwise, which is the more popular route. So here's Bubbs Creek, where we had to cross to get off of Rae Lakes Loop and make it up to Lake East and Reflection Lake. It was on me up to my thighs and up to on Erica almost up to her hips, and the water was moving pretty fast, but didn't feel dangerous at all. So we made it about halfway up and stopped for lunch, and of course took a couple selfies. I think I took more selfies on this trip than I've ever taken. When we got to Lake Reflection, I did a 360. It's just still amazing looking back at this, how it looks like it's not even real. Then after I was done at Lake Reflection, we went back down to Lake East and camped there. Our goal the next day was to make it to Charlotte Lake to set us up to go over Glen Pass. And so the first part of the day was just going downhill back to Bubbs Creek to get back over the creek crossing and start our way up to Charlotte Lake. And even though we had already seen everything on this type of out and back, when you do it the opposite direction, it's like a whole different trail. Along the way, there were multiple waterfalls, and some of them, like this one, just flow over just flat granite or plain granite without any stones or anything else, and then fall off a cliff at the edge there. And there'll be another waterfall like that on, I believe, our 5th day. So we made it to Charlotte Lake, camped up away from Charlotte Lake a little bit, but then hiked down to Charlotte Lake and ate. Our goal the next day was to get over Glen Pass, and our plan was actually to camp at Rae Lakes. Along the way, we actually changed that plan a little bit. So you start off from Charlotte Lake going up. You come to a little bit of a valley, and then you start going up to Glen Pass. As you're going up, you can actually see the lake in the background with Charlotte Lake, where we had camped the night before. The trail is in my opinion, excellent condition all the way around. Every trail that we were on, even a couple of the side trails, which were marked as unmaintained, were easy to follow, very few down trees, and very well maintained. So as you get farther and farther up toward Glen Pass, the scenery changes dramatically. And as you get to Glen Pass, all you're seeing is rocks and snow. Up to this point, we had seen very little snow. We did have to cross over a couple small sections. But then as you get up to Glen Pass, if you're going counterclockwise and go over the pass to the north side, there was a lot of snow. 2022 was a very low snow year based on my research in advance. And I'd already seen videos of other people going over the pass, so I knew there wasn't a lot of snow. In other years at this time of year, you would not be able to go over it if you didn't have an ice axe and crampons so that you wouldn't just slide down the side of the mountain. So when you get up to Glen Pass and look over, you can see that a lot of the switchbacks are still covered in snow. You can see Rae Lakes off in the distance. When we first got up there, there was a marmot that I caught on camera just for a second there. We took a break. Another couple that was up there also hiking, although the guy said he was hiking to Canada, took a picture for us, and then we started down. The ice valleys that are created by the other hikers actually make it easier to hike through there. And we were early enough that the snow was still mostly firm, but we could see where people had planted their foot and gone in all the way up to their waist and post-holed it, where you have to pull yourself completely out. And then there was more snow and even a snow slide. But the going down to that point was pretty easy. When we got to Rae Lakes, we had lunch, had several deer just wandering around as we ate lunch. We could see Fin Dome from where we were, and again, our plan was to stay at Rae Lakes, but we decided to just keep going. We were going to then hike to lower Rae Lakes and camp there, changed our mind again, decided to hike to Arrowhead Lake. It was still early, so we decided to hike to Dollar Lake. What we didn't realize is once you get past Dollar Lake, there aren't many campsites. So we ended up hiking all of the way to the suspension bridge, which you'll see a little bit later, which was a very rocky hike. Once we got there, set up our camp, had dinner, made a fire, and went to bed. The next day, the goal was to go to the Woods Lake area, which is also not part of the Rae Lakes Loop, and to go back to where we had camped the night before. So here's the suspension bridge, which when you go over it, if you keep your feet apart, it starts swaying pretty bad. If you keep your feet 1 foot in front of the other, it doesn't sway, it just bounces up and down a little bit, so it was easy to get across. And then we started up to the Wood Lakes area, which was that last picture, and on the way back down we stopped at another waterfall, which was just a big granite slab with water going down it. And then as you walked down that big granite slab, the water got narrower and narrower into a chute that was pretty impressive. So we had a nice break there, just watching the water flow and throwing sticks and rocks in there to watch them flow down and get caught up in that chute. The next day, our goal was to get to actually Upper Paradise campsite. We ended up going farther than that. The main feature of this part of the hike of the Rae Lakes Loop is the river crossing. There's a bridge there that was apparently blown out in 2016, and so there's no repair since then, and you just have to make your way across the river. But just like every other part of this trip, the trip down to the river was just beautiful view after beautiful view. So when you get down there, you can see where the bridge was blown out down river just a little bit. It wasn't that bad, and so we picked a point to cross and went over there. For Erica, it was thigh deep in a couple places. For me, a little less so, but we made it across pretty easily. The water was flowing hard. Had sandals on, which actually made it harder, but kept my socks and shoes dry. So once we got across, just sat on a log and ate our lunch at that point. Then when we got to our campsite and just had a seat on a log before we had even set up, we saw a black bear that was also a bear that was black. Just walk right through the campsite, didn't want anything to do with us, and just kept going on his merry way. For the next day, our goal was simply to get up and camp out with enough time to drive back to Fresno or do something else. We actually ended up deciding to go see the largest tree in the world. And when we woke up, in our camp was a mule deer, just wandering around, didn't seem all that skittish or all that frightened of us at all, and let us get pretty close before it ran off. So we got our breakfast and started hiking the rest of the way down, back to the trailhead, back to the ranger station. And again, the views were just spectacular in all kinds of different environments, from rocks to almost rainforest-like. And then you also get to see, as you go down this section, Mist Falls, which is apparently a very popular place for day hikers to go from the ranger station up to Mist Falls, because it's only a few miles and they can get there and back. So from this point forward, we started seeing lots more people, most of whom just had a bottle of water or a very small day pack, so that they could just get back to the ranger station after coming up to Mist Falls. And from looking at it, it's pretty obvious why they call it that. And it was the only waterfall along the route that we saw that was like that, that was putting off that much of a mist. So then you get back to the bottom and you get to that last 2 mile flat stretch where you could pick up the pace a little bit, although it was sandy. Saw lizards and squirrels, but no bear this time in this section. So at that point we camped out, we hiked out, Here's a few selfies that we took along the way. There was lots of interesting things. We took close to 800 pictures and videos, only a few of which I was going to put into a video that's already probably longer than is interesting for most people. So the purpose of this video was really just to document this trip for ourselves, but if anybody else finds it interesting or finds something helpful, that's just an added bonus if they get ideas for planning their own trips. If you do this, you do have to get or something like it in this area, you have to get your permits well in advance. We got ours like 5 months or almost 6 months in advance. The thing that's different about Kings Canyon, or one of the things that's different, is you do have to have a bare canister. You can't hang. And you do have to pack everything out, including your used toilet paper. So even though it was a beautiful trip with beautiful views, it is difficult in its unique ways.